Welcome to Your Way Now. We're Sue and Sarah, coaches supporting people living with cancer and those moving beyond it. Each episode shares real stories, expert insight, and gentle tools to help you feel more supported, physically, emotionally, and mentally. This is Your Way Now.
Get the strength you want and need from real stories and expert voices. It's time for Your Way Now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Your Way Now. My name is Sue Brown, my colleague Sarah Hurst. We're here to bring you interesting stories, top tips, and things that can help you if you've been affected by cancer. So, very pleased to welcome our guest today, Tim Johnson.
Hello. Hello,
everyone. Tim, why don't we start off by just telling us a little bit about what's brought you here today?
Oh, that old journey, huh?
Start at the very beginning.
It's always
Well,
a place to start.
Yeah, it is. For many years, I was a corporate trainer with a luxury jeweler, high-end jeweler, and international well-known company. But also alongside that, I studied Tai Chi and Qigong. So that was kind of what helped me, because I don't know, corporate environments are not all the time, but certainly I experienced aspects of quite deep toxicity.
Right, yeah.
Some things happen, you know. And the Tai Chi helped me with regards to keeping myself on an even keel. And how it also corresponds to, from a breathing perspective, I was quite a chronic mouth breather. So I wouldn't say I was a young parent by any stretch of the imagination, but I was certainly a parent of young children when I'd started with my previous company and also Tai Chi. And one of the first things my Tai Chi teacher told me was that I needed to breathe just through my nose. And I said, why is that? And he said, because it keeps in the power.
Oh.
And I was like, okay. And I wasn't brave enough to go, well, I don't know what you mean at that point. But now I know. And with regards that the power is the tolerance, the buildup of carbon dioxide. Because when we talk about things like qi, as you know, qi is Mandarin for your breath, for your life force. When that can be restricted by how you breathe, then everything within your body is not flowing as it should be. So keeping that tolerance to the carbon dioxide to a great degree, that opens up the blood vessels. And the more the blood vessels open up and dilate, the more oxygen-rich blood flows through into your heart and, of course, around your vascular system. And when that happens, great things happen. So there's the power. When you're breathing through your mouth, you're going, you're breathing out far too much carbon dioxide than you would normally do. And so that begins to constrict the blood vessels. It changes your pH balance ever so slightly. And then that constriction cuts things off. So you're not getting the oxygen rich blood. The diffusion of the oxygen, the carbon dioxide isn't happening as much. You're not necessarily getting the 20% of oxygen on every breath that your brain needs to function correctly. So that was my initial. Now I know all of that subsequently. I didn't know that at the time, but then towards the end of my career, and I was with that company 17 years in various different capacities, but ultimately as the training manager. And it was really important for me because of my philosophy with regards to Tai Chi that I wanted people to have a greater understanding about themselves. I wanted them to understand that what they were doing, whilst it was important within their particular role, it wasn't the most important thing in their lives, which is, I wasn't necessarily saying, doing more important things outside of your work, but it's there are things outside of work than just your work. Exactly. So you're talking about completely having a balance. And sometimes that toxicity that was prevalent at times, not all the time, but at times meant the pressures that people were under were enormous. Because it was a selling culture. You were trying to sell jewelry and watches and things like this. So it came to a stage where towards the end of that, COVID happened. I was furloughed for 3 months, and I have to say it was the best 3 months of my working life. I know a hideous amount of people passed away. 2 members of my family sort of passed away as well. However, I was able to reconnect with my kids because I used to commute to London every single day. I was able to reconnect with my wife. I used to be traveling at least 3 months of the year to different places. And it gave me a point of just going, now I can just breathe. And I could. And it completely changed. And I lasted another maybe a year because there were certain projects I wanted to finish. But ultimately, that gave me the impetus to say, no, this is not what I want any longer. So I thought, right, I'm going to work on the breath, because for me, that is the most fundamental thing that we do. If we were to not eat, we would last approximately a month, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, depending on the individual. If we weren't to drink then any water, then we'd last, if we're lucky, 4 or 5 days. If we don't breathe,
it's only a few seconds, really.
Yeah. So,
or maybe minutes. Maybe a
minute. Yeah. So depending on how well trained we are, but it is that essence for me was the most fundamental thing, and that is what turned me towards it. Although I have been doing it with regards to Tai Chi and Qigong, but not to any great direction. So once I decided this is where I wanted to go, then it was a question of, okay, how and what and where, from a breathwork perspective, do I want to be? Now, I've done quite a lot of Wim Hof. That actually helped me get out of a little depression, which was that is really about getting rid of that carbon dioxide and becoming more alkaline. However, I didn't really like the breathing aspect of that. The cold water aspect, really enjoyed, and it was quite an extraordinary thing. But the breathing, not so much, because that essence of getting rid of all that carbon dioxide, holding the breath, was not for me. Maybe for other people. And say Wim Hof helped me quite a lot with regards to that. So I was looking for something else. So I found a gentleman called Patrick McEwen, who he runs the Buteyko Clinic International, and the Buteyko breathing method is named after the Ukrainian doctor. I think he passed away in 2002, I think it was, about the age of 85. He was a Ukrainian doctor studying medicine in Moscow when it was the Soviet Union. So we're talking in the late 1950s. And he was put on the asthma ward. In terms of, so people had asthma, and you've got to remember, certainly Moscow in the late 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s was pretty heavily industrialized place. So lots of people had heavy respiratory issues, and he discovered that their issues, yes, they did have those issues, but it was exacerbated by the way that they breathed, and that was through the mouth. So he began to change and retrain people's breathing to breathe more through the nose, and their symptoms heavily reduced. And certainly with regards to asthma in those days, they were just trying to keep people alive. They didn't have the medicine and things that we have now. So that intrigued me, because it was a different way of breathing. It was, instead of trying to let go of a lot of energy, you were keeping the energy in, and you were learning how to tolerate the buildup of carbon dioxide. Because when we cannot breathe, or feel that we cannot breathe, we think we're not getting enough oxygen. It's all that sort of aspect to it. But it really isn't the amount of air. because we've got, even if we could go breathe out as long as we possibly can, we've still got a litre of air to stop our lungs from collapsing. So it's there. It's the buildup of carbon dioxide. Because as soon as, if you go swimming and you put your head underwater, you can feel it. You've held your breath for, you're holding breath for however long, and you feel that creep. That creep coming up here. I need to breathe. I need to breathe. I need to breathe. That is the carbon dioxide acting as a alarm system for your brain and telling you to breathe. So, which is a great thing. So, carbon dioxide is fantastic within the body. Not so much out in the environment, but within our body. Without it, we would be dead.
That's really interesting, because we always think of oxygen more than carbon dioxide, don't we?
Completely.
So,
well, you need the two, because you have the gas exchange when you're obviously breathing in, hopefully through the nose. Every time we breathe in through the nose, it goes deep within our lungs. We have 500 million alveoli at the bottom of our lungs. I only read that when I started sort of researching about breath. I remembered alveoli from my old O-level days back in the day. So, but that helps they're surrounded by blood vessels, millions and millions of blood vessels. And when that gas exchange occurs, then of course it goes into the heart again, as I said, out to the vascular system. But when we don't breathe correctly, so when, for example, we are mouth breathing, and again, I used to have young children. I used to change their nappies, and I had a stressful job. I was trying to pay bills and rent, and then a mortgage, and so it was a stressful environment. I didn't realize like this, but I was. So, which is putting undue stress on my heart, undue stress on all my internal organs. So there was this way of breathing where you could capture that power, and that power being the carbon dioxide, where everything is moving, as you said earlier on, with what we call homeostasis, which is our balance. And that for me was extraordinary, utterly extraordinary, that you can just change things so simply and begin to really understand and change and influence how you feel. Because especially from your autonomic nervous system. And when we talk from maybe a Tai Chi perspective, we talk about what's known as dantians. And they are the ultimate is the lower dantian, about 6 centimeters below your tummy button. But also you have the middle dantian, which is your heart and your lungs, and the upper dantian, which is your mind. So you've got those, 4 aspects with those two. So your mind, heart and lungs, and your digestive system. So that is the autonomic nervous system. And dantians translates roughly as fields of medicine. So when you're able to tap into those fields of medicine in terms of your autonomic nervous system, then you can influence how you feel. And again, that for me is wonderful. And anybody can do it. Anybody, no matter what condition they are, they can change. As an example, I recently had a client with what's known as interstitial lung disease, so the hardening and scarring of the lungs. But they got into such a state with their body from a trauma perspective that they're kind of breathing like this. So getting the person to breathe more readily through their nose, they're not going to get away from the condition that they have. That's permanent. But in terms of being able to cope with that perceived lack of air, by just breathing through the nose, help that person to relax to a much greater degree.
It must be such a relief to be able to feel that, knowing that you've got a condition that is a chronic condition that's not going anywhere, to be able to get back that sense of control. So how long does it take for you working with somebody? You work with them on a one-to-one basis, or
generally? Well, I mean, I do workshops and things as well, and I do courses. It depends. Usually, the one-to-ones, I do a 5-week course. If I'm doing it with a group, it'd be 6 weeks, but it'll be longer for each particular session as well. And it gives people just an idea and an understanding in terms of changing how they feel. Now, this is not an exact science, but you can usually see the difference by session 3. So if we're doing a 5-week course, as an example, we're doing 1 hour-long session per week if it's an individual person, and usually by week or session 3, they would have really begun to start to feel a particular difference. That's assuming that they're doing the daily practice exercises, because of course we've got to put in, and you will get out absolutely what you put in.
So you're giving the instruction, observing the changes,
Yes,
and then giving them homework to do
absolutely
in between, and
yes.
then noting the progress.
Yes, I mean, if they did no homework, their breathing would improve a little bit. It would absolutely improve. But if they do the homework, then it depends on the individual's disposition. But some of the results that we've had have been extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
So my question comes to obviously people then who have got cancer, and how, I mean, I do work a little bit with breath work myself, probably not to the depth that you do, but I do just incorporate a little bit into my coaching sessions, and have done, a sort of a course in some breath work. How does yours relate to people with cancer? How can you help people with cancer, in regards to breath work? How is this beneficial for them?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started doing something for initially Albion in the community, as you well know. So in terms of, they had a cancer course there. So I put myself forward to try and do something from that. It's a voluntary basis. We did, along with Macmillan, I've done 10 courses for people with cancer. And this is traversed the Brighton Hove Albion Foundation when they renamed themselves, rebranded, and then of course funding was cut, as always with some of these things. So it was at the beginning, it was very much a bit of a trial and error. However, what really, I think, impressed me, I think more than anything else, was people's capabilities. No matter what. Because we didn't talk about cancer. Everyone knew they had cancer, various different forms, types, stages, etc., etc. But that wasn't the point of why they were there. And we would take metrics each week. I'll give you an extreme example, just to sort of put in sort of context. There's a respiratory rate test. So how many times a person breathes in 1 minute? Usually, the more breaths that they take, that's breathing in and breathing out through the nose, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing in and breathing out equals 1 breath. And they count it for 1 minute. The more breaths you take in 1 minute, the more stressed you are. Stress being an overarching term. We had I think stage 3 cancer. Cancer, I have no idea what it was, can't remember. 32 breaths in 1 minute. That's a lot. That's
hyperventilating.
Yeah. So that was session 1. By session 6, because of course it was a group, so we slightly longer. By session 6, she was down to 3 breaths.
Wow.
So that's not, me going, oh, look at this, you can do. No, this is about her understanding and retraining her body. So I think the first thing that this is what people have told me have been on the courses, is they get their bodies back, in terms of they get control over their bodies. Because, quite rightly, I'm very fortunate enough not to have had cancer, but you've got to give your body over to medical science. They tell you what to do. This is what we've got to have. This is the best course of treatment, etc., etc. So all you're doing is going from pillar to post, being poked, prodded, drinking things, having all sorts of therapies done to you. And it's obviously incredibly tough on the mind and the body. So to be able to have an essence of control back, I can just breathe and make them feel better, because again, you're influencing your autonomic nervous system. So you're able to slow your heart rate down. You'll be able to relax yourself, triggering your vagal nerve. all these sorts of things are beginning to happen. And also when that aspect of we spoke about in terms of the tolerance to the carbon dioxide, in being able to increase that with the little exercises that we do on a weekly basis. And of course, they also have homework as well. So when you're able to do that, the difference in their outlook changed enormously. The difference in how they perceived themselves began to change enormously. And of course, the metrics, purely because this is just biology. It's not me waving this magic wand. It's them doing the work. Me saying, well, we can do this. Let's try this. And then doing it and then feeling better. Feeling in control, feeling, oh, I can do this. And you would see massive differences along the way.
Would you say most of those people weren't aware of how
Completely.
badly they were breathing before
Completely.
you started talking to them about
Yes.
it? Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I would say that's probably about 90% of the world.
Yes. Yeah.
But,
Guilty. Yeah.
But it's but yes, if you're talking about in that isolation from a cancer perspective, it's really, really interesting. Because when I've done some work with a couple of different medical centers now, and I I did about 2.5 months ago. I did a set of 4 workshops, 2 workshops with 2 different medical centers, and in total there was about 70 people. That is. Doctors, GPs, paramedics, physios, all sorts of different aspects. I said to all of them at the very beginning of the workshop, hands up those of you who've checked in with your breathing in the last 6 months. Not one single person put their hand up. So whilst breathing is nodded to as a way of calming down, because again, when you breathe out to a greater degree than when you breathe in, your heart rate slows down. You're breathing in, your heart accelerates. You breathe out, your heart decelerates. So if you're breathing out for longer, again, biologically, that is what your heart is going to do. So nobody within the NHS, I mean, there are a few people, of course, but it's not readily thought that helping a person to breathe to a much greater degree, making them more aware of their breath, is going to help them. I was having if you look at it from a slightly different perspective, I was having a chat with some people from a local football club, again, a Premier League football club, and they have everything for their players, everything, in terms of helping them. But they have nobody talking to them about their breath, how they can upregulate when they need to, how they can downregulate when they need to, how they can do what's known as coherent breathing, just breathing in and out. So you are able to have that homeostasis, that balance, how you're able to endure more, how you're able to recover more quickly. All of these things. So if I had a person with stage 4 cancer and an elite footballer, the principles are exactly the same. The application, of course, is vastly different, but the principles in terms of having greater control over your breath are just the same.
And if somebody's got cancer, is there any breathing exercises that they actually can't do?
I think that depends on their stage and how they are feeling. But if you are living with cancer and you're living, quite easy, there should be not certainly any of the breathing exercises that I do. I mean, I'm also sort of trained in what's known as conscious connected breathwork. I wouldn't be doing that with a person with cancer, but in elements of getting them to decrease their respiratory rate, and the optimum for that is 6 breaths per minute. Whilst at rest, not when you're doing things. It's impossible to gauge. And also increase what we call the control pause with regards to their tolerance to the carbon dioxide. So all the exercises surrounding those, and of course, stretching a person's lungs, giving them an opportunity to stretch their lungs, increase the tone of their diaphragm, because that's part of their core strength. It wraps around the whole lower part of the rib cage and holds us up. So giving them little exercise that they can do within their own parameters is the most important thing. Everything that I do is based on that person. In terms of whether I do it with a Tai Chi, Qigong, whether I do it from a breathing perspective, is getting them to understand where their parameters are, and then working not just within those parameters, but then slowly and gently beginning to expand those parameters so they have a better understanding. Awareness and understanding is the biggest thing.
That's great, thank you. And also, could you share with us a couple of breathing techniques that you might work with people? I know obviously you said that it's very specific to the person, but some, if anybody's, well, hopefully there's people watching and listening, that they might just be able to take a couple of sort of small things away with them.
Well, this I do with it doesn't matter whether it's an elite footballer. It doesn't matter if it's a person with chronic asthma. I'll be doing exactly the same thing with this particular exercise. And and it's always strange when I bring this up. This is humming. Yeah, or bee breath, some people call it, and things like this. This, for me, is if I was to give a person one exercise to do for the rest of their life from a breathing perspective, it would be this. Purely because, well, any number of different reasons. The first one being you have a longer out breath. So that's slowing your heart rate down, triggering your parasympathetic nervous system and your vagal nerve. But you also, if you're breathing in through the nose and out through the nose, you're creating a gas called nitric oxide, which is the third gas, which is utterly brilliant. When you hum, you create up to 15 times greater the amount of nitric oxide. Now, what this does, a little bit like carbon dioxide, it acts as a vasodilator, so it dilates the blood vessels coming into the lungs. It also is a bronchodilator, the bronchioles are opening up those, helping us to breathe. If we've been talking all day or are exclusively a mouth breather, then you have the oxygen only goes halfway down your lungs, so it's not diffusing correctly with the carbon dioxide. You have an imbalance where the blood goes down. That imbalance sends a signal to the brain that there's a stress, low-key stress, but a stress nonetheless, and then you get a shot of cortisol and adrenaline. Now, if that's happening all the time, which it used to be when I trained, sometimes I'd be speaking for many, many hours, then you'd be absolutely banjaxed. Now, if that's happening all the time, every day, and then perhaps at night you're going like this,
Never.
then there's a permanent mouth breathing structure going on. So then that, because you don't get rid of the carbon dioxide, I keep going on about carbon dioxide, you don't get rid of the cortisol and adrenaline. So your sympathetic nervous system is up here and it's not coming down. So you need other things to bring it down for the parasympathetic to rise. Humming will do that. So it'll help redistribute the blood in your lungs, which sends a signal to the brain, everything's all right down here. You don't need anything. We're doing good. And also they use it with regards to newborn babies or premature babies. Those who have difficulty because their lungs aren't fully formed, and it helps to smooth impurities in the lungs. So it is the best thing. So again, if you want me to do it,
should we do it?
Okay.
Well, should we do it? Should we all do it?
So
we'll all just buzz.
It's kind of quite nice. Yeah, if you're ever doing any breathing exercise, it's always really, really lovely to feel where your breath is. So putting one hand on your chest, one hand on your abdomen, and then all you're doing is just breathing in through the nose, and then just humming. When we finish that hum, we'll pour the nitric oxide in our sinuses here and up here, and we just breathe in, goes all the way down into our lungs, and we just hum again. And so long as your out breath is longer than your in breath, it's doing you good. And we just carry on.
See, I think the sound therapy on that is great as
It
well,
is.
you see, because we've got
Because with
sound therapy
resonance.
and frequencies, you
Yeah.
know, which I'm all into as well. So, but that's another podcast and another subject. But
Better than my singing.
Yeah, well,
it's definitely
my
better than
singing's
mine.
terrible.
Let's sing, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, from that perspective, because, you know, the resonance that people feel, because, you know, you usually have to take my glasses off because it's tingling here. But then I start to feel, you know, tingling my fingers, and everywhere I start to become a little bit alive with humming, as well as it taking around about 90 seconds for your brain to go, oh, you're doing that again, are you? Okay. And then you go, oh, then you're feeling all right.
So what I'm taking away is shut up during the day and listen to your breath more and take more notice of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and that will help at night, should anything be going
Yes.
on then, and do the sort of exercise, the humming to what's the phrase? Re-regulate.
Yeah,
to just
down
sort of bring
regulate
you
your
down
breathing.
to, okay.
So, you know, I think the most important thing is to be aware of our breathing, you know, and where it is, whether we are breathing through our mouths, where we are breathing up here, and absolutely when, you know, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Stress gets us to do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we need it. The reptilian nervous system is the most basic thing that we have. It hasn't caught up with, from an evolution perspective, where we are as human beings now. But many sort of millennia ago, it served its purpose. And it's to get us to do stuff.
Yeah.
To get out of the way and things like that.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, but it's when it's stuck there, that's the issue. So being aware of not breathing through our chest, you know, because if we look, most people breathe at least 80% from our chest, 20% from our abdomen. It should be the other way around. So imagining that breathing in through the abdomen, and then that little bit, 20%, just through the chest there. Then if you're doing that, you are going to stay calmer. Biology dictates that's what is going to happen. And what's known as coherent breathing in the same amount as you're breathing out.
I was going to ask you about that one because it's one of my favourites.
Yeah,
that and alternate nostril breathing is I love as well. But the coherent breathing, I just think, is just so simple, yet so powerful, just for bringing us back down as that parasympathetic nervous system. So perhaps could we just do like a little round of coherent breathing while we're talking about it? So again, our listeners get to hear what it is.
Four simple rounds, and we'll do it for. Are you okay to breathe in for 4 or 5?
4, 5, 6, whatever you want to do.
Well,
you lead the way.
Well,
I
okay.
don't know.
So, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's start at 4, and then and maybe for the last one we'll go to 5. So I will say in 2, 3, 4, and then go out 2, 3, 4, and in 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, all through the notes. In 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. We'll change it to 5. In 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5. One more. In 2, 3, 4, 5, out 2, 3, 4, 5. Simple as that. And obviously you don't have to count that all the time, because you get to realize and understand where your breathing is. And it doesn't have to, if you're walking, you know, down the street, you know, you're not going to be doing, I mean, you can do, but you're not necessarily going to be more active to do it for less.
So these are things that we could build into a routine and do it every day as we're walking around or whatever. But not, I guess the thing is, like everything, is it prevention and
completely,
and doing that as a routine so that then when you need extra resources, you've got that.
Yeah, you don't have to sit on the bus and hum. You could just do coherent breathing.
Yeah,
that's why I don't use the bus.
Yeah, but this is
humming in my car.
Well, humming in the car is a perfect thing. Humming when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. Humming when you're in the shower. You know, or just even if it's for 30 seconds. You know, the benefits. And what's an interesting thing, because what you said earlier, slightly earlier, was about prevention. It is about prevention. In Chinese medicine, in the old days, because they don't do necessarily Chinese medicine as much anymore, but they used to pay their doctors every week or every month. When they fell ill, or if they fell ill, they would stop paying their doctors because they weren't doing their job properly.
Right.
And I think that is about prevention. So you may not suddenly go, oh my God, I can do this, this, and this. That's not what breathing is about. Breathing with economy and breathing with efficiency is about keeping that balance, and understanding where we are with that. Because you can go all the way back to, pre-industrial revolution, when people started, then were breathing okay. And actually, I read something really recently, which I thought was brilliant, and which absolutely I'll start to use. But if I was to bring a photograph of a breathing guru, I would show you a picture of a sleeping baby, because they breathe correctly. Their mouths closed. Sometimes babies open their mouths, but you can just and they'll keep them closed. They breathe through their nose, assuming there's no congestion, of course. But I do have an exercise for that. They're breathing abdominally. They're breathing through the nose, breathing abdominally, because that's how we're supposed to breathe as human.
So, what do you think's changed?
Well, in terms of the stress rates have gone through the roof. I mean, we talk about the Industrial Revolution. Things are deemed to make our lives easier, which in many respects they have. However, the stress on the individual is much greater. And I spoke a little bit about, we talk about children. Children grow out of that sort of breathing. And if you look at, and they mimic their parents. I don't blame the parents. I was exactly one of those parents who mouth breathed. But when you're a relatively young parent, or you're stressed from a particular job, you're stressed from a relationship, you're stressed from paying bills, you're stressed with young kids because they're really, really stressful, and you start to breathe less economically and possibly not as relaxed. This then goes into the kids. Now, if the kids maybe having problems, ADD, ADHD, OCD, also, drug issues. You have hideous things like molestation in terms of parents splitting up, all sorts of really tragic things that can happen to kids. Then they go through puberty, and then they're trying to make their way in life, whether it's through college or work or university. And then they're trying to fit in. Then they're trying to establish themselves as adults, and they're constantly breathing inefficiently. Then they become parents, perhaps. And then that's then passed on to their kids, because that's how and so it happens. I mean, that's an oversimplistic view of how it is, but it does happen. So this is why I think, breathing as a foundational tool. And I'm writing a book about some of the clients and things that I've had at the moment called the Breath Foundation. This is about giving somebody that basis, that foundation, that rootedness, where they can feel whole. And it doesn't happen like that. Of course it doesn't. And if you've had, again, I've got a client at the moment, for pretty much 70 years, he's been breathing inefficiently. For any number of different reasons. But his body is wanting to tell him to breathe more normally. So it's just changing some elements over. And and it doesn't matter what age. The oldest client I've ever had is 91. The youngest I've got is a 4-year-old. Completely different things. But if for the 91-year-old is about finding comfort in their breath. That is what they need to do. For the 4-year-old is having to change how that child thinks. And he's a congenital illness. So, he needs to sort of breathe to a much greater degree to help him lead a more normal life. So these are, again, extremes of the age spectrum, but is where we need to start. And that brings me back to that very first thing of that foundation I talked about. If you can just sit here, influence how you feel, you won't change it necessarily, but influence. And the more you're breathing with efficiency and correctly, when you do have the issues, when you do have that pain in the backside email, when you do have somebody cutting you up on the road, somebody being rude to you, when it's it does not affect you as much because you're breathing. Okay, so because everyone's like, like this all the time at the moment, and unfortunately, we can go COVID, we can go for all manner of different things. You put First World War, Second World War, all sorts of things that change people.
Yeah.
But the fact that remains is that we all still breathe. And when we can breathe within ourselves and with confidence and control, we feel better.
I think that's a great place to sort of draw
Yeah,
this to
I mean,
conclusion.
everyone goes through some sort of trauma, don't they? Or
Absolutely.
the range of things you've just described. But if that cycle can be broken by really simple means, and we can teach our youngsters, the children, to start with that, how much better will their quality of their lives be.
Completely.
So, yeah. Fantastic,
And they'll teach the
thank you.
parents.
Yes, that's usually the way, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah,
yes.
they learn something and then come home and tell you all about it, and
Yeah.
guilt trip you into it.
So let's just end with your top tip that you'd just like to give any listeners today. I mean, there's been absolute
There's a
mine
lot.
of
I'll give
information
you,
there.
yes, there's a lot of stuff.
And
huh?
honestly, it's been really, really informative. So thank you so much for your
pleasure.
shares today. And
Yes.
it's been, but if there was one top tip that you could just give, what would that be?
Just do some humming. Hum,
And on
and
that
hum
note,
again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just to end then, Tim, where can people find you if they want to make contact with you?
So I'm on Instagram with Tai Chi Coaching. That's my name of my company. I being the individual, the Chi is our life force, and I help with that. Or on www.ichicoaching.com, and I'm there. And if people need to sort of chat, I do individual work. I work with groups. I'm starting with Lewis Prison, some prisoners there in a couple of weeks. So it is there. If people have any issues with their breathing, even it's a free consultation. Just they can chat about their breathing issues, their respiratory issues, whatever it is, and I can see if I can help. And the worst case scenario, there's no obligation to carry on. Worst case scenario, we have a good chat, maybe a cup of tea, and we've learned a little bit about each other, and that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely so informative. So thank you for this episode. Thank you to my co-host, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you for watching and listening, everybody. And see you next time.
See you next time.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Get the strength you want and need from real stories and expert voices. It's time for Your Way Now.
Thank you for listening to Your Way Now. If you have a story you'd like to share, or would like to be a guest, or have ideas about what would be helpful to hear on future episodes, we'd really love to hear from you. Please remember you're not alone on this journey, and your voice really does matter. So until next time, this is Your Way Now.